Last week, cash. Just cash in the box. Without envelope, without nothing.
Rabbi, would you like me to bring the vodka so you can make a little high?
Yes, please. Yes.
I would just.
Huh? Yeah. Shalom Aleichem. What's your name? Where do you live? Oh, Shalom Aleichem. How do we do the red carpet thing?
We gave him fresh designers. We gave him the best here in the world.
Okay. Very shame.
Here, Rabbi.
We gave him the best night.
A little bit.
Oh, I think you have notes on this, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, tonight we're dedicating the shir in honor of the special Rosh Yeshiva, which that we're learning now a Sicha about learning together in a yeshiva and a Beis Medrash with a Rosh Yeshiva. So his name was Rabbi Vichnan, Olav Sholem, and Nachman Dov's father. Okay, so first let's make l'chaim because we'll have it as a chassidus of Habrengen as well, and that's the way we'll start.
I'm gonna break you in.
Rabbi, if it's okay, I'll make the final sulfur water.
Yeah, that's fine.
I can't drink that.
You have to drive.
No, it's not about driving.
No,
I'll
no,
just
no.
drink it.
Oh,
It would take longer to look for a spot. Summer, you can easily get.
okay, give it to Shmuel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvoreh.
Hey.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. As we know that the Rebbe had this idea of learning Pshat and Chumash, and that any one of the Rishonim that wrote the Pirush, starting with Rashi, especially with Rashi, they weren't collecting little pieces of information here and there, a nice medrash, a collection. Rashi was tired by night. He threw this word and another word. This medrash, he threw things together and mixed it a little bit up. Rashi had a methodology, he had a shita, and he learned from Bereshit Bara until Ein Kol Yisrael a certain style of Pshuta Shel Mikra. Even though Rashi says Pshat, within Pshat there's also several. Even Ezra had a different take on Pshat, that Rashban had different. Rashi himself had different, but he said that he's writing basically for a child about Chomesh L'Mikra, mit a gleiche Kop, about Chomesh L'Mikra, like the Rambam we just learned, who said that making a calendar for 150 years, learning Kiddush HaChodesh, children could do it in 3 and 4 days. Yeah. So, but still, a child is for the child. The Seichel HaYosher for the child is not mefulful. He doesn't know Gemara, Babakama, Babmetzib, Bababas, and Sanhedrin, Amagas. There's a certain style in Pshat. So let's read a few, three psukim that seem very similar, and they have a shaila. And Dafka the Sifrei asks a shaila and brings two opinions. And Rashi, and see how Rashi treats it, and then see how the Rebbe brings an unbelievable light, not only to explain the Rashi, but to explain several stories in the pasuk. Al pi pshat, and then pashtetzach, al pi halacha, and al pi hayro and avodas Hashem. Three similar stories. Actually, there's one more story that Agav Orch. And Parshas Balois, there's a story. Vaya noshim shoy tmeim la nefesh adam la yochel la sa pesach vayamahu vayikru vaymosh ufnei aram vayamahu. Vayomer anoshim ahem ela vanachnu tmeim la nefesh adam lo menegar la bilte akre vet karban hashem moed betech bnei Yisrael. They complained. Why should they not bring a carbon? They were told me. Emel Moshe im de veshra meitzav Hashem lachem dav Hashem Moshe lemer dav bnei Yisrael lemer ish ki etam la nefesh der kafrik lachem der tzech was pesach Hashem. There's a second chance. There's a second chance. So they came and complained. How come there's no carbon Pesach for us? There's a second chance. Rashi is a problem. Rashi is a problem. What's Rashi's problem? Because my computer is a little sticking up, so I didn't bring the Dibra Maskla of Rashi. But Rashi quotes the words in the first pasuk, "Vayikru v'lifnei Moshe v'lifnei Aaron v'yamahu." Rashi says, and Rashi never asks his question, but it's obvious what his question is by the words he quotes. They asked the Shiloh by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I don't know the answer. Oh, you don't know the answer? Don't worry. We'll go to Aaron HaKohen. We'll ask Aaron. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. A child can ask such a question. So Rashi says, "K'sheshneim yoshvim bebeis hamedrash bo v'shalom v'lo yitochen loim zeh acher zeh." It's not possible to say that they first asked Moshe and then they asked to Aaron. Shim Moshe lo yoyo yodeya Aaron menayin lo. If the pshat is they first asked to Moshe, and that what they asked Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe said, "Sorry, it's vechnich. I don't know."
Why can't it be that they talked asked together?
That's the answer.
That's what it says.
Read
That's what the
inside.
pasuk says.
That's not what the pasuk says. It's what Rashi
It says
says.
the Moshe and the Aaron. So I would say
Separate.
that since that they consulted Moshe and Aaron together, that's what I would think.
Okay. But the thing is that if you were right, a child,
Normally, they would have asked
Right.
Moshe
but a
himself.
5-year-old is not such a mafuf. A 5-year-old
Alright.
says, if that was right, that should say Lifnei Moshe v'Aaron. Lifnei Moshe
Yeah.
v'Aaron.
Yeah. Got a point.
Why does it say Lifnei Moshe v'Lifnei Aaron? It sounds like they're talking separate. Yeah. So therefore Rashi says, and we'll soon talk about what Rashi is trying to emphasize when he says "V'lo yitochem lo mazach hazeh." The kid said really what the Rebbe says. He thinks the pshat is that the Rashi does acknowledge that Lifnei Moshe, Lifnei Aaron sounds like they talk to two people. But Rashi says lo yitochem lo imen, that they asked first by Moshe and then by Aaron. But they sat in the base medrash, and the Rebbe will soon explain why he thinks that when you're sitting in the base medrash, it's shaykh to say that they should talk separately to Moshe and Aaron. And what's the chidush over here? That's what the Rebbe is going to try to say. And then there's Parshas Shlach, where over there it says V'ibnei Yisrael v'amidbar v'yimtzu ish makoshesh eitzim v'mashavas v'yikru v'oitza moitza moitza makoshesh v'moshe v'alaram v'kol ha'eda v'nichas v'mishpah kol ha'perish ma ya'aseh lav yem Hashem v'moshe v'yisumas ha'yish shiraga moitza v'avanim kol ha'eda v'chutz l'machna v'yitzio yisrael kol ha'eda v'chutz l'machna v'yig moitza v'avanim v'yamas kasher tziv Hashem as Moshe. So it's a story that after the story of the Meraglim, that they found a man that's makoshesh eitzim. They brought him to Moshe, to Aaron, to whole Eda, and they put him in jail. They didn't know what to do with him. So the Abisha said, Moshe, that he has to be killed with skila. And that's what they did. And that's a very short story in the Torah. Okay.
Who brought them to Moshe down or to Laila?
Hamoitzi Moshe. By Kiribo is Hamoitzi Moshe.
To who? To Moshe?
To Moshe, to Aaron, El Kol Ha'eda. So here's the same kasha. El Moshe, Vel Aaron, El Kol Ha'eda.
But it doesn't
And-
say they asked Aaron.
Right, they brought him. The Sifrei,
Moshe.
right, and the Sifrei asks the same question that Rashi has before, and in the third parsha, Pinchas, the Sifrei asks the same question 3 times, and the Sifrei says 3 times the same question and same exact answer, B'diyuk ois b'ois, and similar to that is the Gemara in Baba Basra, that Kuf Yutes. But Rashi treats each one of the 3 stories differently. The first time, he gives one answer. Second time, he doesn't even ask the question. Let's skip for a second Parshas Emor and go to Parshas Pinchas. And then the third time, he brings Taka the answer exactly the way the Sifrei and the Gemara says it. The third story is the story of Nais Slavcha, which is past week's Parsha. Sorry, we're a little behind. Usually we do Sunday night a week ahead. Last week, Sunday night, was Shiva Savatama, so we're doing this now. But the Kravna ben Slavcha ben Chefer ben Gila ben Mocher ben Menashe Lamishpos Menashe ben Yosef Eila Shmoisav ben Yosef Shmois ben Yosef Machla Noya Chogla Milka Besirtza. But Taman of Moshe ben Elazar Lifnei and Nesim. V'cholo Eida, Pesach Oil Moed Laim. So they came in front of Moshe, in front of Elazar, in front of the Nesim, in front of the Eida.
So it sounds like the talk, they came in front of everyone at the same time, not like Rashi says in Malosta. First they went to Moshe, then they went to Elazar.
Yeah, wait a minute, you're skipping. Let's read what Rashi says. It says almost the same thing. It's just over here, it adds not only Lifnei Moshe, but Lifnei Elazar, but also it says Lifnei Nesim.
And then
And then it says V'cholei Pesach Hamed, right?
four.
Yeah, 4. Yeah, what's going on? Avinu meis b'mitzvah, v'loy b'seichei dan adam al Hashem b'das koirek. V'chetei meis, u'bonim loy hoyo loy. He says they complained. Why should they not get a chelik v'nachla in Eretz Yisrael? They complained, Lama Yigor Hashem Avinu Metech Mishpachtek Ein Loi Bein Tno Lonu Achuza Betech Achei Avinu. Vayakar Moshe Shmispotem Lifnei Hashem V'yem Hashem HaMoshe Lema came b'nei Slav Kodei was there, right? Nosan Titan Lama Achuza Snachlo Betech Achei Avim V'vart Snachit Savim Lahem. So the b'nei Slav came and they complained that they want to have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, and the Eibush said, they're right. Rashi has the same problem here. He quotes Lifnei Moshe, Lifnei Elazar HaKohen, Lifnei Nesim, and he says, V'achakach Lifnei Elazar. What? They spoke to Moshe, and then Moshe said, I don't know what to tell you. So they said, you know what, look, you know what, you don't not forget about it. Let's talk to Elazar. And no, but Aaron already passed away. I'm saying we're not gonna. Yeah, we'll talk to Elazar. Elazar says, I don't know.
Well, they're not consulting.
Right. In Moshe lo yoidea, Elazar yoidea. Moshe doesn't know. Elazar's gonna know. Ela sodas hamikdash v'desheyu. You have to turn around the masadas the mishka, cut it in pieces and turn it around, and darshan it. Divrei Rabbi Yoshio. Rabbi Yoshio said that you have to spin the pasuk around. What does it mean? You spin the pasuk around. You have to say like this: the women came to the Nesim, and the Nesim said, "We don't know the answer." So they went up. They went to Elazar. Allah said, "We don't know the answer." So let's talk to the boss. I want to talk to the boss. They went to Moshe. And the pasuk says it the other way. A second answer. No,
That's what I said.
your answer. Yeah, you go good with Rabbi with Abachon. Yeah, you go good with Abachon. The Rashi was a little tired. Rashi was tired when he's writing the pshat. Yeah, last time he decided to go with the second pshat, which really is very good in pshat. To be Masad is the Mishnah, the pasuk. To say that the pasuk was saying it this way, and really you have to read it that way. Rashi himself says it. V'dorsheyu, it's Adrash. Rashi himself acknowledges Adrash. It's funny. So this is the reason I love this Rashi Sicha. This is typical. A lot of the Mefarshim ask questions, but they don't have an answer for this. But this is mamish, like you look at three things. The Sifrei in all three places asks the same question. All three consistently gives the same answer. That the Reb Oshio said, "Soris Amikras v'dosheyu," and Abachonim Mishum Reb Elazar said, "The Beis Medrash Yoshev Amdu L'fnei Chulam." The Sifrei that says the same question, all three Parshas, same two answers, simple and plain, similar to that in the Gemara Baba Basra. Rashi, the first time he decided the second pshat is a good pshat, and it makes sense. Second time, it was 4:00 in the morning. He couldn't deal with it, so he didn't write anything. And the third parsha, it's like a chap to bring the whole Sifrei Kilshoina, noch with the names of the Bala members too, which the first time he didn't bring any names of the Bala members. So when you read Rashi, it's funny, and the Moshe Zuchmach, how you go give an answer for such a question. But the Rebbe's mahalach is that there's no such thing. But the Rashi was b'diuk otzim. Every word, like for example, it says Sodas Hamikdash v'dorsheyu. The Rebbe brings that sometimes the Rashi says Sodas Hamikdash u'parsheyu. If there's no other pshat, that's the Sodas Hamikdash is parsheyu. That's the pshat. But if there's another pshat that you could say in pshat, so it must say that this is darsheyu. Every word in Rashi b'diuk otzim. So what's going on over here? So first, the Rebbe says two things that l'choira pshat that he slugs up, but it builds up to the real teretz. That if you look in Parshas Pinchas, there's a little different than in the Parshas Pinchas. Besides saying lifnei Moshe lifnei Elazar, we have another thing that we add, which is kol ha'eda. So could be Rashi thought it's a little schwer to say that the whole Eda packed into one base medrash. It's a little doichik to say that. First of all, in Parsha Shlach, it says also Val Kol Ha'eda. And if you have a problem with that, so say something there. And Machlal, how big is the Eda? It's not so clear that the whole Eda means that every single Kol Ha'eda could mean. Rashi says if, for example, it says, Rashi says, V'im kol adas Yisrael yishgu, Rashi says, Elo Sanhedrin. When you say kol it could be more people. Kol ha'eda could even mean Sanhedrin. And to say that they couldn't all fit into the Beis HaMedrash, why? Rashi says, "Nend the Parsha Kesisa." Okay, to say that Mishnah Nichnas Kol, and he learned once with Aaron, and then the second time he learned with the son, Aaron and his sons, and then with the whole. What do you mean? There wasn't a place that Moshe could teach all Bnei Yisrael about that. That's B'chlal. It's a shvere zach to sagen. Huh? No, but he's saying. Yeah, but it's saying in the. Yeah, but they're saying in the other because over here, oh, Shalom Aleichem. Yeah, but still, there is a difference. That over there it doesn't say V'chol ha'eda, and here it does say V'chol ha'eda. Another thing that is that over there it doesn't say Pesach Oyel Moed. Here it says Pesach Oyel Moed. So maybe you'd say Rashi doesn't think that Pesach Oyel Moed was a place for a Beis Medrash. Also, it's a doichik. You have to explain. I mean, what's Pesach Oyel Moed? Oyel Moed is a pretty big place. Rashi says Pesach Oyel Moed says v'shachat tesapor lifnei Hashem. Pesach Oyel Moed. Rashi said that's Chatzar HaMishkan. Chatzar HaMishkan is 50 by 100 amas. Pretty choshev. Right. But it's a nice space. Rashi says that Parshas Mishpatim Tosim Sanhedrin Eitzel Mizbeach. So. Ada could mean right. So exactly, we don't know if we don't know that Ada means every single Yid. So here's the beer what the Rebbe thinks. And why does Rashi emphasize Beis HaMedrash? So the Rebbe says like this. Taka, the diuk is Pesach Oyel Moed, but what's the pshat? Rashi said in Baloischa, Rashi wants to say pshat. Rashi doesn't like in pshat to say Soris Amikra B'Dershei. Doesn't want to say that. Over there, it doesn't say that they were sitting Pesach Oyel Moed. So you could answer because here's the thing. We find many times the psukim that they would blow with the Chatzotzis Pesach Oyel Moed when Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to talk to Klal Yisrael. The Toku Beinu when Nodu Alecha Kol Eida Al Pesach Oyel Moed. Rashi said similar Mikra Eida. So when Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to talk to whole Eida, he had a milk crate, or maybe they built a fancy bima, and they would blow the Chatzotzis. The whole Eida would come, and Moshe Rabbeinu would give him Nadrosh.
Is a trumpet?
Trumpet. Okay. They blow the trumpets, and he would come. Okay. He would give his speech. Then there is a Beis Medrash. Rashi emphasized Beis Medrash. What's the pshat of a Beis Medrash? When we say in general, when we say Beis Medrash, what does it conjure up in your mind? What do you think when you think Beis Medrash? A whole group of people are sitting, even though every Beis Medrash today has a Rosh Yeshiva and they have a few Magidei Shiurim. But when you say Shaila Zu Nishala Beveis HaMedrash, for example, always the Rishonim have this Shaila Zu Nishala Beveis HaMedrash. That's usually that you think of that a little differently. Shaila Zu Nishala Lifnei HaRambam, or they'd say no. Shaila Zu Nishala Beveis HaMedrash. What's the difference? The difference is like this: the Rambam would sit in the Beis Din Shtibel, and sometimes they would come and ask a Shaila by Moshe Rabbeinu. They would ask by Moshe ben Maimon Asfardi. In every town there was a Beis Din Shtibel. Maybe there were other Choshev people. Maybe there were people that were learning Shemush, and there were other Talmidei Chacham sitting. When a person comes into the Beis Din Shtibel and he asks a question, he's asking the question to the Rav and to the Dayan. Someone else has something to say. Maybe they want to whisper to the Rav in his ear or the Dayan, but that's the Beis Din Shtibel. Beis Medrash. When we say Nishalu Shaila Zu Beis HaMedrash, what does it mean Beis HaMedrash? Open conversation. Could be the Rashba sitting in the Beis HaMedrash, the Rambam is sitting in his Beis HaMedrash. There's a conversation going on. When we say Shaila Zu Nishalu Beis HaMedrash, right? So that's what in Parshas Baloischa, where it doesn't say Pesach Oyel Moed. Pesach Oyel Moed sounds like the place of Moshe Rabbeinu with blow Chatzotzis. Moshe would stand and give a message to Klal Yisrael. It doesn't sound like that's the place where they sat and they were mefalful b'divrei Torah. So over there we have to deal with it. Over here in Parshas Baloischa, it doesn't say Pesach Oyel Moed, but it does say Vayikru v'lifnei Moshe v'lifnei Aaron. It sounds like the question wasn't only said to Moshe, because it was only asked to Moshe. It would say Lifnei Moshe v'Aaron, because it says lifnei Moshe, v'lifnei Aaron, it sounds like they were asked both the questions. And Rashi answered simple. It was sitting in a base medrash. So when they came in and they asked, even though Moshe Rabbeinu was the Rosh Yeshiva, he's the Manig and the Nosir Klal Yisrael at that time, but they came into the Beis Medrash, Shaila Lazum Nishala Beis Medrash, and therefore it makes sense. And Rashi emphasizes, even though the pasuk says Lifnei Moshe, V'lifnei Aaron, not the Aaron, so it sounds like the question was asked to Moshe and to Aaron. So it wasn't disrespectful. They came to Beis Medrash, but don't tell me that they asked first Moshe and then they turned to Aaron. That's impossible. You can't ask a question by Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, "I don't know," and say, "Aaron, you know." That doesn't make sense. Now, when he comes later in Parshas Shlach, Rashi has no questions over here. Again, the Tosefta is a medrash. The Tosefta is a drash. So Rashi has no question over here. What's the question? They saw a person doing a crime. Rashi said they saw someone doing a crime. So and Rashi says that Makoisha Sheitzim, Rashi says they knew that he's chayiv mitzvah. They just didn't know which type of mitzvah. Skila, Sereif, Hereg, or Chenek. But they knew he's chayiv mitzvah. The people that saw him do the crime, they knew he's chayiv mitzvah. They might have not even known that there is a shayla, which type of mitzvah, but they knew he's chayiv mitzvah. So they know a guy's chayiv mitzvah, so they grab him and they deliver him. Where? They must give him only to Moshe. Can't bring a criminal must be brought to Moshe, to Aaron. It's no question. It says Vayikrivu Oisa Moitze Moise Mekoshe Sheitzim El Moshe Vel Aaron Vel Kol Ha'eda. They saw a guy being Mechal Shabbos. They knew it's Chil Shabbos. They knew Chil Shabbos is Chayav Misa. So they grabbed the guy and they brought him to Moshe, to Aaron, whoever was there. They brought him to the right place, and then he was taken. He was put into jail. Rashi has no shaila here. And then in the same thing in Parshas Emer, it says, Rashi says these two stories happened at a similar time. That there was a fight because he wanted to pitch his tent in that Shevet, and he said, no, you don't belong on Shevet. He said, no, but my mother belongs, and but your father's an Egyptian. The whole story, Shlom is Basdibri. So they had a fight. So he went to Moshe Rabbeinu, said the other guy's right. So he got angry. He went out of a bezin and he cursed Hashem's name. V'yikav ben Isha Yisrael Hashem. They call him Moshe. Shemi meishlumis bas divri lamate don. Rashi says they didn't know what the punishment is. They didn't know. And at that point, they didn't know if a makala was. They knew it's a bad thing, but they didn't know if it's chayiv mis or not. It wasn't like a Shabbos. Yeah, Shabbos they knew because already b'mara they already knew, so they knew that you're not allowed to be machal Shabbos. They knew it's chayiv mis. They might have not known skila seref erek chenek, but they knew that. So they caught the criminal. They brought him. Moshe, Valanim, Kol Ha'eda. Here, they obviously knew that something's wrong. They're being makal Shem Hashem. But they didn't know the halacha is a chayiv mis or not. So therefore, they went to Moshe. When you have a shayla and halacha,
they didn't think it may come under a mamzer.
Whatever they thought, they didn't know. They weren't sure. So when you're not sure, and you have a shayla and halacha, you ask. Who do you ask? Moshe Rabbeinu. In the other case, they didn't have a shayla. They knew it's chayiv misa. So they brought him El Moshe, El Anan, El Kol Ha'eda. Therefore, these two places Rashi doesn't say anything, because if a child is not sleeping when he's learning in class, he knows what's going on. No question. Rashi doesn't have to explain. He does have to explain when we come to Parshas Pinchas. It says Vatamoid Lifnei Moshe, V'lifnei Elazar HaKohen, V'lifnei Nesim, the Chol Ha'eda were there. Pesach Oil Moed. To say now that the Beis HaMedrash Yoshvim is a very doichik pshat. The Beis HaMedrash Yoshvim, they were sitting in the Beis HaMedrash, but the pasuk says Pesach Oil Moed. So true, there was a Sanhedrin next to the Mizbeah. They used to blow the chatzrotzes, and Moshe used to give a message to Klal Yisrael Pesach Oil Moed. But to say that was the place where they would sit the Beis HaMedrash. They would be mefalful. Doesn't sound
In
that
other
way.
words, it sounds like Pesach Omer is outdoors and the base medrash is indoors.
Not only outdoors and indoors. You think about it today. Every Yid likes to come as man and to hear inspiring words in the base of Knesset and the base of Medrash. So every shul is packed in Yom Kippur to hear the sermon, the Kol Nidrei sermon, right? How many people come to the base of Medrash to be mafalful? Just numbers. How many Jews come to hear Kol Nidrei sermon in the United States of America? Stama in the millions. How many people Baruch Hashem Torah today? If you go, if you go to Lakewood, go to Madrasha here in Brooklyn, but Baruch Hashem, even before the war, maybe there wasn't such a thing. La'alofim, that sits in the base of Medrash, but not in the millions, right? So Rashi's saying that it's a little doichik when you're saying Kol Oeda Pesach Oyel Moyed, and to say that that's the pshat the base of Medrash Oya Yoshvim. So Rashi thinks that's a second pshat. It's a second pshat.
Unless you say the Eidah is a small
He-
number,
he's-
not a big number.
Yeah,
Like the Sanhedrin,
right, unless you would say that Kol Oeda, exactly. So you would have to maybe say that. But then Rashi thinks it's a second pshat. And the first pshat he thinks is even though it's so doichik, and he thought it's a drash, but we have no choice. That here Rashi thinks it's more plausible to say Saras HaMikra V'Dorsheyu, that you should read this mikra instead of from right to left, from left to right, that they went to the Nisim and said it's not fair. We're not getting a portion of the land and we have no brother. Nisim said we don't know what to do. So they went to Alaza. It's not fair. We're not getting a portion of the land. What should we do? I don't know. So they went to Anna. I'm sorry, to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I don't know, but you know what? Wait a few minutes, I'll talk to God. And David told him,
Aaron couldn't talk to God.
Aaron wasn't there.
first of all, it's not Aaron. First of all, it's Allah.
Lazar, but the other Indian by when we said that it was Tumash and Aaron, assuming Aaron said to Moshe, I got a question. I talked to God. I don't want to be more lucky since you are the Mate. Could Aaron consult God?
I don't know. It's a good question. It doesn't sound like when it comes to Torah that he was able to do that. But maybe when it was the Urim Atumim to go to war, not to go to war, and other questions, I don't think.
So why they do?
I don't,
Why they?
no, because it could be in this. In which story? In the Valoischa story? Here, Rashi says in the first pshat that really they didn't go straight to Moshe. They went first to the Nesiim because these are the people that you talk to. They didn't know it's such a complicated story. They went to the Nesiim. They said, "What do we do?" Nesiim said, "We don't know." So they went higher up. They went to,
Nowadays, you go to your local Rav, and if the local Rav
doesn't know, you go right there, right? Okay, God Ladar, but here, the God Ladar has a direct line to the Rebbeinu Shalom.
Yeah.
Moshe Rabbeinu, when he doesn't know, he asks the Rebbeinu Shalom. So therefore, here, and why does Rashi bring the name of the Balei Amembra? Because it's a little strange to say Soros Amikra B'Sheyu. And Rashi says the name because the Rabbi the Rebbe says that in general, the name of the Balamaimer, the child doesn't know the whole Tanakh and the whole Mishnah and the whole Gemara, and he doesn't know the Seder Adoyres from Yechiel Alperin, but his Rebbe probably knows. So if he'll ask his Rebbe, who is Rebbe Oshia, and who is Rebbe Lozer, his Rebbe might know that all over Shas and the Sifrei and the Mechilta, there's about 12 places where they argue, and each time it's the same shling. That Rebbe Oshia had a shita that Soros HaMikra, and Rebbe Lozer said, no, we'll be doichik, but we're never going to be Mesaris HaMikra. So his Rebbe is going to tell him, you should know that there is two shitas of Chachma Yisrael. That one holds that when it's a little tough to read the pasuk straight, when you can't read it from right to left, you read it from left to right. And there's another opinion that says you stand on your head, but you never do that. You dray like this, you dray like this, you change the pshat, but you never read, you never mesares as hamikra, you never do that mikra. That's why Rashi here brings the name of the Balei Amem. Anyway, so to summarize, we have three stories. And in each story, you see in the Sifrei, which is Al Pi Halacha, just brings the Machlokes Rebbe Yoshia and Rebbe Lozer by all three, because they really argued in all three. But Rashi is not quoting a Gemara. He's not quoting a Medrash. He's trying to explain the pshat of the story in the Torah. So in the first story, you could learn it that they were all sitting in the base of Medrash. So why have to bring other opinions? And Rashi is not bringing opinions. You just get second story. There's no question here. A child is not asking any question. A guy did a crime. They grabbed him. They brought him. Al Moshe, Velanim, Al Kol. That's it. No questions. Same thing in Parshas Emer. A guy curses the Abish's name, but they never knew what. So they go to Moshe. They ask Allah. In this story in Pinchas, where it says Lifnei Moshe, Lifnei Elazar, Lifnei Anisim, and everyone was standing Pesach El Moed. And actually feels it's a little doichik and pshat to say that the Beis HaMedrash or Yoshim, they were all sitting in the Beis HaMedrash and they asked the question in front of everyone. So therefore, Rashi brings the two opinions. The Roshio has that idea that whenever a pasuk doesn't read well from right to left, you just read it from left to right. I mean, I'm saying here in this pasuk, it works out. Instead of from right to left, you read it from left to right. But in other places, it's not the way. Just he holds that if you have no choice, you just chop up a pasuk and you just put it together in a different sequence that it should read. It should be readable. And then Abelazar says, no, you never do that. You stand on your head and you say a doichik pshat, and you say that in front of Pesach Hayom Moed that was sitting in a base of Medrash, but you don't want to say Soda Samit.
Also, the first two stories happen with pieces of service classes. Not Machal Shabbos, not Machal Shabbos. Bring over nothing more. Here, it's not a mitzvah. I want to help in the source.
Right. The emes is the first and the last story in the Drush is something unique. The first and the last story is that people are complaining, they're fetching. It's the greasy wheel, the squeaky wheel gets greased. Azoi steht in Chazal. And where does it say? Because it says befedish in the pasuk. It says in the pasuk that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Where does it say? 2 times. Once by the story of the people that were Tama, and they complained and they got Pesach Sheni. And once by the story of Bnei Slavchad, that they wanted a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, and they complained, and they got a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. So it's worth to kvetch. The Rebbe says from here we see an unbelievable lesson of Avodas Hashem. Person says we're in Golas, we're here, we're back with the Rebbeinu Shalom, has this cheshbonos. So had the people that were Tommy said that, we would never have Pesach Sheni.
So it's worth it
to kvetch.
Yeah.
So you got to be the squeaky wheel. Then you'll get the grease. And the same thing when it comes to the Bnei Slavchad. So the same. So really, if you think about it in a certain way, the idea of Saras Samikra and the idea of Yoshim Beis HaMedrash is both the avodah of the Torah. Say that the Torah is not in heaven, the Torah is in this world, and even the angels, when the Eden learn, they come and they eavesdrop. They want to hear what are the Eden saying. When me and you are learning Torah, the Malachim come, because if we're going to say a new thing pshat, they can never say a new pshat. They can never say, oh, let's chop up the pasuk and read it this way, that way. They can never do such a thing. The Torah is in this world. So the whole idea of Saras HaMikra v'Darshei and the whole thing of Yoshim v'Beis HaMedrash and the Sefsei Chidushim is emphasizes the Maila of the learning of the Torah the way it's in this world. Torah is not in heaven. Torah is given to Bnei Yisrael to explain the Torah. It's just that the Rashi says that in the story of the Bnei Slavchad, the Eibush had originally told Allah. Nisalma alem Allah, he forgot Allah. Why? Because we wanted the Bnei Slavchad to have the schus that this Parsha should come through them. But the person in the first case, by the people that were Tamei, it wasn't like Moshe heard the story of Pesach Sheni and forgot. There wasn't no such thing as Pesach Sheni. The Rebbe says, therefore, over there in Drush, it makes more sense. The Beis HaMedrash bo b'shalom. This is a chiddush that was said in the Beis HaMedrash. It really didn't exist before. It's a chiddush that came to the Beis HaMedrash. Because they came in the Beis HaMedrash and they asked, came a chiddush. Because Chazal say, ein medrash below chiddush. There's no such thing that you didn't sit together and learn that there's no chiddush. There's always a chiddush. A hot summer when it's 95 degrees and everyone comes here to base Menachem Mendel, that's the biggest chiddush.
And if not, that's the chiddush.
That's the chiddush. That's a big chiddush.
Yeah.
So there's a chiddush. So they were Tomei and they complained. There was a chiddush that should be Pesach Sheni. But by Slavkot, it wasn't really a chiddush, just that it was forgotten. So over there, the first Peter Shirash is Soras HaMikra V'Dosheyu, that sometimes the mikra is already dear, but you just have to play around with it and remember and come back to what the original halacha was.
According to Rashi, the Kabbalah don't know this,
Not the Rebbe. That the Rebbe will explain it. The Rebbe will explain it.
What's our, how's it answer the kasha? Starts to make for the show.
How does that answer the Shiloh Pashat? If you read now opposite, instead of reading that Vatamoidna Lifnei Moshe, Lifnei Elazar, Lifnei Nasim, you have to really read Vatamoidna Lifnei Nasim, Lifnei Elazar, Lifnei Moshe. They went to Nasim. They said, yeah. He said, we don't know. So they went to Elazar. They went to Elazar. I don't know. They went to Moshe. Your mamish, instead of reading it right to left, you're reading it left to right. It's funny. But that's why Rashi is avoiding saying such a pshat until he has no choice.
Say why the Torah puts it the way it does, even if we are going to interpret it the reverse.
That's what the Rebbe is saying. And pshat doesn't, you can't ask such a question. But in Drush, the Rebbe is saying that you could say
But he
that
doesn't
the Torah
say
wants,
why the Torah would present it that way.
right, if you want, the Torah wants to hint something to you. That there's the mila of a Jew is that when you come to the base of Medrash and you learn that sometimes the Eibishter wants that we should work hard on the learning. We should the Rebbe brought us said a story that it was originally when they had the first Lakutei Torah printed, there were several mistakes. Whatever the mistakes, and then many years later, that they reprinted Lakutei Torah and Torah, and really it's beautiful. That's the print we have today. There's hardly any mistakes. Some of the elder chassidim were very upset about it. They said that originally when we used to learn, we used to break our heads and then figured out it was a mistake. But at least now it's so readable. People they won't even know what the pshat is. They're just reading the whole thing in the length of Asen. There was once a talk that the Rebbe gave in Tavshach Chafei to girls that were going to be counselors in camp. So the Rebbe used to do it before the summer. Girls that were graduating were going to be counselors. They had the right to come to the assembly. The men were shown the exit, and it was adopted for the girls that are graduating or girls that are going to be counselors in any Yiddish camp. The Rebbe said that we see an unbelievable thing. The men, they said, Nitna Roish v'nashuva Mitzrayim. The women loved so much Eretz Yisrael that they complained. Tno lanu nachla. They said there was the opposite. The men said Nitna Roish, we'll go back to Egypt, and then they said Tno lanu nachla. They won't give us a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. We see how much that the Jewish woman had that koyach. The Chiva for Eretz Yisrael, that they complained for it. We see the koyach that a Yid could complain. The Rebbe said that a few things. Number one, that you see that the girls, Jewish women, have such a strong koyach, and they have a Chiva for Torah, for Eretz Yisrael. And the other thing is that the Rebbe said that you see that it helps to complain. It helps to complain. That's pshat, pshat, pshat. Had they not complained, we'd never know that the Parsha of Nachlos. And had the people that were told me not complained, we'd never have Pesach Sheni. Yeah, that's exactly everything. But Madoch, we should complain about Gashmias. And Kal v'chomer, that we should complain about being in Golus. And what does it mean to be in Golus? Our personal Golus. And not only our personal Golus, but that Kal Yisrael is in Golus. They're both connected.
We should complain. We cannot go to
Exactly.
we don't have a blessing.
That's what we have to do. We have to complain and we have to kvetch until we bezoich to have Mashiach Tzidkeinu. Tonight, the sheet is dedicated to Zeicha Nishmas, a special Rosh Yeshiva that was Yoshev Beis HaMedrash, and has Talmidim all over the world that not only that he taught them Torah, but he was like a father to them. Nachman Dov's father. What's your father's name?
Chaim David Nota
Chaim David Nota
and Nachman Dov.
and Nachman Dov. Chaim David Nota and Nachman Dov. From Alichtig Gan Eden, Mitzvah Shem, and a lot of nachas from you and your children, grandchildren. That's cool.
Okay.
The learning word. So
Okay,
Mishnah,
fine.
so Mishnah and Sephardic.
Chaim l'chaim.
Oh, my God.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Morosov.
Was it tell my son?
No, that's what I
Should it tell Shabbos?
said out of my.
Okay, good. Very good. I'll tell the story. Since I'm not about your father.
You're the
I
Shemai.
remember your father very well, but well, okay. Story about the importance of a Rebbe. The Blazer Nanas wrote a book. It's called Subota. It was a few years ago, 2 years ago, I think it was translated in English. Combined, it's highly recommended. Highly, highly, highly recommended. If you haven't,
Many years ago.
yeah, but they reprinted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they reprinted. It was out of print for many years. They mamish just maybe 12 months ago. I bought a copy. I brought it home. It's a little bit of a heavy book to read. It's not like a Holocaust book, which mamish it drains you. Like you lose your koyach for a few hours, and you're like because first of all, the end of the story is good. And he always ends up, sometimes it's comical, and maybe Nebuch Kmat Acharim of this, but always, I mean, he lived to tell the tale. So, and there's only one man in the story. So it's not so draining, but it is draining when you feel his Tzav Yisurim over 20 years and not being in a shul, not seeing a base medish, fighting to not eat Chometz on Pesach. But he said the story like this. That when he was a Talmud in the yeshiva, the Rebbe Rashab sent him. He was already an older Talmud, and he sent him to a shlichus to some cities, and among them was to Yekaterinoslav, which was a city where the Rebbe grew up. His father was the Rav. He was when he was in the Rebbe's father's house. The Rebbe's father opened the door to a room. There was a boy sitting and learning. He said, "You see this boy?" He closed the door. He said, "The tzanut's coming. One day it'll be good for you that you saw this." Just 2 words. That's where the tzanut's coming. It's kedai to look at this. So you think, as a father is very proud of his son that sits here in Malayla, but what's a pshat to the tzanut's coming? It's going to be good for you. So when he was in the Russian Gulag, he was interrogated, and at one point, the interrogator told him, "I don't know why you're fighting. I mean, it's all over. Your Rebbe was living in New York, already passed away." So he was like, he felt like he was drained. He said, for some reason, that moment, he remembered what he saw, the boy sitting and learning. Did he know that in New York that this is going to be the new Rebbe? But he had a good feeling about it. And he said, there's no such thing as no Rebbe. So something like that. He felt interrogator. Okay. Yeah, the Friedrich passed away. I mean, the interrogator knew because he had some, but this guy who's in jail knows nothing. Doesn't know what's day or what's night. So 20 years later, and he was out of the Gulag, and then Chazdei Hashem, he was able to get out of Russia. He came to the United States, and he had the first yechidus with the Rebbe. Rebbe told him that 20 years is not in the cheshbon. He lived he lived to about 100 years old. Rebbe said the 20 years you were there is not in the cheshbon. If he was meant to live 80, now he's going to live 100 years. So don't worry about that 20 years. Don't worry about that. So he told the Rebbe the story about how they tried to break him, that he doesn't have it ever, and that he remembered that. The Rebbe smiled. He said, "No." So the tzanitzah coming.
You just think you would.
Yeah. Okay. So Rebbe shall help from Takem. So tzanitzah coming. That when we stand lifnei Moshe, lifnei Elazar, lifnei Nasiim, that should give us koyach. And our avoid the Hashem. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Yeah, why not? Is that happening?
That's one I'll go much more.
Which Mishnah should we say? It was how to go through the whole other people that nation life. Rebbe said.